mostly disaffected high school kids, unemployed people, or mentally deranged people. People that come back from Vietnam always liked us.
Iggy, who hero-worshipped Morrison, carried his idea of taking the show to the audience just one step further.
That's peanut butter.
But the Stooges' career as a band was dogged by increasing problems with drugs, and their first album, produced by the Velvet Underground's John Cale, sold poorly. Another performer from Detroit would, like Iggy, do things a little differently.
Lines form on my left and right, lines form on my face and hands. I'm in the middle without any plans. I'm a boy and I'm a man. I'm 18.
I'm a boy and I'm a man. I'm 18 and I don't know what I want.
To us, it was a combination of comic books, every RKO horror movie we'd ever seen. We were total students of trivial television. We never read anything that wasn't a cheap novel, you know. I mean, we were really the epitome of the American cultureless society. And all we did was we invented this Frankenstein named Alice Cooper that was really a reflection of that.
I gotta get out of this clothes. I gotta run it with the hottest clothes.
I think the idea of insulting the middle America by changing your name to Alice Cooper and wearing women's clothes and everybody in the band being dead straight, and instead of being dopers, everybody drank beer. We were all American. We were every bit all American, and all we did was we took all the taboos and just put them on the table. I always say that we were the dagger in the heart of the love generation. You know, we were like the stake right through the heart, because we were right at the end of peace and love, and all of a sudden here was this shiny new horrible monster that was really fun to watch.
What does it take?
We played the Toronto Rock and Roll Revival. There was about 80,000 people outdoors, and nobody had ever heard of us.
Give me a break, yeah.
And we did our normal set. Well, at the end of our show, we always used to take a pillow, and we'd open it up, and we had CO2 cartridges, and we would blow these feathers all over the audience. And one pillow will pretty much cover Madison Square Garden. And we had about 3 or 4 pillows that night. And all the feathers were going, and somebody from the audience threw a chicken on stage. And I picked it up, you know, I figured it's a bird. You know, I'm from Detroit, I don't know, if chicken's got wings, it'll fly. And I threw it back in the audience, figuring it would just fly away. And it went into the audience, and the audience tore it to pieces. Next thing I knew, in the paper was Alice Cooper tears chicken to pieces and bites head off and drinks blood. And I get this call the next morning from Frank Zappa, and he says, "Did you do that to the chicken?" I said, "No." He says, "Don't tell anybody." He says, "Everybody loves this story about you and the chicken and everything."
It was a British artist who would develop an even more extreme image of the rock star as a glittery creature from another planet.
Ground control to Major Tom. 7, 6, commencing countdown.
Among a number of films that made a deep impression upon me in the 60s, I think one of the most important at the very end was 2001, Stanley Kubrick. It was the sense of isolation that I related to. That, in combination with a number of other elements, set the pattern for a lot of the kinds of music that I wrote and the kind of performances that I gave, and probably predicted my lifestyle for the 70s.
This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade. And the papers want to know whose shirt you wear.
I was talking with a friend of mine not so long ago about, who also came from suburbia. And you're given the impression that nothing culturally belongs to you, that you are sort of in this wasteland. And I think there's a passion for most people that have an iota of sort of curiosity about them to escape and get out and try and find who one is and find some kinds of roots, you know. And both of us got out for the same reasons. For exactly that, a desperation and exhaustion with the blandness of where we grew up.
David Jones became David Bowie and trained in theater and mime before recording a series of mainly folk-based albums. Apart from the early success of Space Oddity in 1969, which was regarded at the time as a novelty song, Bowie's records sold poorly until his wife Angie suggested a bold publicity move.
I knew I had a job in there somewhere, and it was a dirty job, but somebody had to do it, and I was the man for it. Or rather, I was the androgyne for it.
Oh, you pretty things, don't you know you're trying?
Bowie was the first rock star to proclaim publicly that he was bisexual or gay. The reaction became even stronger when he posed for the cover of one album, The Man Who Sold the World, in a dress. Although the album cover was changed by the record company for its U.S. release.
You gotta make way for the Homo superior.
On his first visit to New York, Bowie met Andy Warhol. He drew considerable inspiration from a group of actors associated with Warhol's Factory.
Will somebody wait for me? Sugar sweet, so easy. Bye, bye, black.
When I was doing Andy Warhol's Pork in New York, they said Pork was nothing but a bunch of naked freaks running around on stage doing perverted acts, you know. We were going, yeah, come see the show. Anyway, when Bowie and Angela came to see Pork and she started to meet all the cast of Pork, people were dyeing their hair purple and green. Lee was coloring his hair with magic markers. We wore our fingernail polish out in the clubs. We wore our fingernail polish on the street. We dressed, you know, just as crazy on the street as we did on stage. Angie began to push David in that direction. Without any of that, David would have just continued having long, floppy hair and singing folk songs.
Well, I'm up on the 11th floor and I'm watching the cruisers below.
It was not only the Warhol look that began to influence Bowie, it was the New York sound as well.
The Velvet Underground became very important to me. There was this sort of mixture of rock and avant-garde. Cale's influence of avant-garde and Lou Reed's very fine pop tunesmithism. He was a very fine pop writer, and the combination was so brutal.
While in New York, Bowie got to know Lou Reed, as well as the irrepressible Iggy Pop, who, in imitation of some of the Warhol superstars, had started to cover himself with glitter on stage.
To me, they represented the wild side of existentialist America. And of course, being a sort of a real nutcase about America and American music, that was everything that I thought we should have in England. I didn't know if we had it in England or not. So at that time, one was borrowing heavily from the American influence. But of course, being filtered through this British system, it came out in more vaudeville, more Robert Smith than MC5.
The result was Ziggy Stardust.
Ziggy play guitar, jamming good with Weird and Gilly, and the spiders from Mars.
Ziggy was unveiled to the British public in 1972 in a series of small concerts. Finally, Bowie had found the combination that was going to work.
And then we were Ziggy's band.
Ziggy kind of exploded overnight. I think Ziggy Stardust, David had been working on one way or another for a long time. And it was his sort of alien being, his first of all, Ziggy was an alien being. He was like the stranger that we all feel that we are, except he was very beautiful and very seductive and